Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast. I'm your host, Luisa Lyons, and my guest today is Eddie Aronoff, the founder of Stage Russia and Art Scene Films, companies that film and distribute musicals and plays from Russia and South Korea to cinemas and streaming platforms around the world. Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
My pleasure. So you have a very diverse background in fashion and teaching English as a second language. How did you come to the world of filmed live theater?
Well, when I moved to Moscow in 2008, I had a desire to be a writer, but I couldn't get that going, which a lot of people who want to be writers, I guess, can claim. And the next best thing, I suppose, was to work vicariously through other writers as a producer. So Russian theater at the time in 2016 or 2015 was, I thought, quite different than American theater and very interesting for me to experience, even though I didn't speak Russian then and I don't speak Russian now, which is quite a challenge when you've been somewhere for 15 years. I still viscerally enjoyed the performances, and I liked the idea that the directors were able to create such fantastic works based on classics or usually classics. And the theater system in Russia is far different in that the director is the artistic director of a theater and more or less puts out product every year or so, and that product is signature to them, and it feels very much like something that, and I thought at the time, really, I had this fantasy that I could bridge the cultural divide between Russia and America. This is before Ukraine, after Crimea, but before Ukraine. And I thought, oh, this will be like an olive branch. We'll be able to get all these American theater lovers, world theater lovers to watch these films. But it turned out that 90% or at least 80% of my audience are Russians who live in Russians and Ukrainians and all CIS countries who live in America. And so they were longing for this product that they had missed, and I was kind of filling that void for them for a while. And then when Russia became persona non grata in the world, I started thinking about different things I could do, since I had built up a reservoir of cinemas that I was working with and no longer really had product that was marketable for them or for me. And I built a relationship with the Yeji Shin, who was with Licensing in Korea, South Korea. We were distributing her musical of Anna Karenina, which was done at the Moscow Operetta, and Count Orlov, which was also done at Moscow Operetta as part of Stage Russia. And I turned to her and we just started talking about other product, and she said she had these Korean musicals, and the first one was Phantom with Kyuhyun of Super Junior. And I know nothing about, or knew nothing about K-pop, but I knew it was popular. So that's all I kind of understood. It's been a phenomenal success in comparison, certainly with Stage Russia, in the sense that it does have a specific audience, these K musicals, and particularly the ones with Kyuhyun, but it's a much broader audience. And the marketing is more or less putting a post on social media and having it spread like wildfire. And so then I got into that side, and we've now done Werther, which is also with Kyuhyun, and we're just about to release in Indonesia another musical, K musical, based on Crash Landing on You, which was a phenomenal success on television, even in the U.S. and certainly in Asia and elsewhere. And there's a musical version of that we're putting into the Indonesian cinemas on June 21st, and hopefully elsewhere soon thereafter. We're plotting out our course, and then we have additional musicals in the hopper, so to speak. EMK musical Elisabeth, I believe, Hero, and also a Stargazer, Astro, the band Astro. They have a concert film that we have the rights to that has already been released in cinemas, or was released in cinemas last year, but will be re-released by us hopefully in 2024 winter, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's
that's
really,
a brief
fascinating.
history. Yeah, it's a brief history of what I've done.
It's interesting, the crossover of audiences, because I think I came to art scene films through Phantom, which I knew because of Maury Yeston, who's an American composer, and it's kind of called the other Phantom in inverted commas, because it was written before Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom, but it was because of Lloyd Webber's Phantom, it never got the traction that his version did.
Exactly, and I was worried about that a
beautiful.
little bit. It's very beautiful. I was worried about it, truthfully, that the one thing you don't want is to disappoint audience members who come and think they're going to see something and then it's something else. So, it was important to me that all our promotion was focused on the idea that this was the other Phantom, or at least not Phantom of the Opera, just Phantom the Musical, and also yes, and make sure we got the right names in there, that it wasn't Lloyd Webber and that kind of thing. So we were very focused on that.
Yeah, I'm curious, so you lived in New York when you lived in the US?
I grew up in New York, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Did
moved
you
here.
attend a lot of theater here?
Not particularly. I mean, I did. I was more into films and writing films, and then at one point I started writing theater pieces, plays. I was very friendly with Jonathan Larson. We went to high school together, and we were working on a musical about Ponce de Leon before he passed away. We had this idea of doing that he was still alive and well and living in Tampa, and that he had found the fountain of youth, but had squandered his 500 years that he was like over 500 years old at the time, and he had squandered all those years because he had just survived, and it was not through some sort of miracle that he had done. He just found this fountain of youth, and it never reached anywhere. His obviously Rent, his success with Rent happened after posthumous.
Little known musical.
Yes. That one. He. I think you know the story, that on the eve of his premiere at the downtown on 4th Street, I guess it was.
A New York Theater Workshop.
Yeah, he was. He had a heart attack that evening, the night before, and it was quite incredible and tragic.
Yeah.
But,
such a tragic story, and
yes.
part of that legacy of that show, that live each day as if it's your last. Live each day to the fullest, because you never know when your time is up.
Exactly, and it was through the years we had gone to high school together, and then our first reunion in 1988 we reconnected, and were friends up until 96, and he and that's probably the closest I came to seeing a lot of musical theater, because I went and saw everything that he was doing, and he had done Tick Tick Boom, and he had done another one called Suburbia, which I think or Suburbia, I think it was, not Suburbia.
Yeah, that sounds
Suburbia.
Right. Yeah. Suburbia, yeah.
And so there was a group of us who kind of got involved with Tori Leacock and some of these other people that were deeply
And is it right
involved
that
in
your
opera.
mom was an opera singer?
Very good. Yeah, yeah. My mom was an opera singer. Not at the Met, not at the New York City, but at the New York Theater. I'm trying to think of what was the name of the group. It was Vincent LaSelva was the name of the head of it, and it would every summer she'd perform in the park and elsewhere, but the park was the big performance, and she was good. She had leads, and she was. I hated it as a kid because I didn't like my mother screaming in the house all the time, as I saw. But it was a she was a prodigy when she was young, and had married my father and kind of gave up on that part of it, as women did. And then she rekindled interest in it in, I believe, the early 70s when I was like 10 or 12 years old. And started performing and started getting involved. And then she got the Grand Opera, New York Grand Opera, that's what she was called. And she was performing everywhere. She came to China and performed there. And she had a nice second act in her career of singing opera. And now I appreciate it more. Back then I wanted my mommy. I didn't want to share.
I'm fascinated. Like it's interesting that this world has it's been bubbling under the surface in your life. Like it was kind of there, but it wasn't your main passion or something that you like seemed to want to pursue. And it's interesting. I love that you were interested in film and how you've combined this
Yeah.
interest in theater with this love of film, and now you're bringing theater to people all over the world through the medium of film.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, I mean, the idea of filming theater came as a result of not having enough money to bring a live production. I really wanted to bring live productions to the U.S. from Russia. I really had a passion to do it, and I met with a very powerful managing director at a very big theater called the Vakhtangov Theater, and it was almost 10 years ago, I guess. And I walked into his office and I said, I want to be involved in helping bring some of your productions to America. How can I do that? He said, well, do anything you want. You have my permission. Go to anybody, any place you want to go. So I said, well, that's great. That's great. I kind of thought that maybe I'd find a partner who would be willing to do it. I mean, there are New York City-based companies that did this before, brought Russian theater to venues across the U.S., but not that many. And I was well situated here, I thought, to do it. And then as I was walking out of his office, I said to him, I said, how would you feel about if I were to film some of these productions like National Theatre Live or Metropolitan Opera and bring it that way? And he said, great. So he said, in fact, we have a couple of film performances you can have if you want. I said, really? I can use them? He said, yes. I said, when? He said, now, whatever you want. So we started with this idea, but then I got a partner involved here in Russia who was a filmmaker, and he wanted the film. So he said, no, I don't want to use there because they put it on YouTube, or we have to have control. So we filmed it, and from that point on, it just became something, because it seemed logical that if you don't have enough money to bring a live performance, if you can bring the performance on film and find partners. And for some reason, I thought it was a great idea. It's a good idea, but it's not a great idea.
I personally think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, what I mean is it's not so easy to break in and I had no experience. I didn't know cinemas. I didn't know distribution. I didn't know anything. So I just dove in, and I found the U.S. distributor, Spectacast. That was the name of the distributor, who was involved in this kind of thing. And they helped at the beginning launch Stage Russia and put it out there. And then at some point they lost a lot of money on some project with Kevin Smith, the filmmaker. And I don't know, something happened and they were broke. And at some point, they gave me permission to distribute myself to the cinemas they had contact with. And I kind of was using their contact base to reach out to the cinemas and start my relationship with them on my own. And that's how it all kind of began. But it was not done with any sort of background, as you said, no experience.
And so I'm curious about your filmmaker partner. What's his name, and what's his background for filming live theater? Mm.
His name is Alexei Shemyatovsky, but he's no longer involved in the project because it's a long story, but he's not involved in the project. And but the first few films we did are terrific, and his work was really good. In Russia, filming theater performances for the Culture Channel, as it's called, similar to what PBS probably did years ago, filming theater productions and putting them onto Channel 13 in New York. They do that
Great
here.
performances and
yes,
Playhouse theater and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the old days, Playhouse 90 in the 50s was live theater on television, but no, I think they did a few productions. If you go back, there are some musicals, of course, and now NBC got involved in doing musicals and big budgets and sometimes exterior shots. And The Wiz, or Grease, I kind of remember being filmed. And anyway, it was kind of interesting. And he had gotten involved in filming productions for the Russian Cultural Ministry for people in Russia. So he had filmed productions before, and he thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to show his talent in America. And I think that was what got me provided me access to a lot of theaters, is that the idea that their productions would be seen on American cinema screens was interesting for them. And and they were going to be paid in US dollars, which was even more interesting for them because the ruble and dollar rate was not so great. So they were very excited about it. And I think they still would be if it weren't for the situation now, but it's not irrevocable, I hope. I hope there's some solution that we can find a way to end things and renew relationship with the US, and it'd be wonderful. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. So for now, Korean musicals, and with the exodus of great directors from Russia to Europe and the Baltic states and elsewhere, Lithuania, Latvia, we're following the directors who left, and they're now presenting works by these directors, these staged performances in these foreign countries. And it's still under the Stage Russia banner and art scene films as well, because we can't promote Stage Russia at all. It's impossible on Facebook, or we get nasty comments, which is justified. And we call it Artists in Exile. And we're doing performances from these directors who are now elsewhere. So that's the one way we were kind of trying to keep that part of our business going, and support these artists who gave up everything to start new and fresh. One of them is in New York, one of them is in Berlin, I think, another one is in Klaipėda, Lithuania. They're all over the place. So we try to assist as we can and put those productions out there.
And I think it speaks to the tragedy of war, that first of all, that these people have had to flee where they grew up, and that they're, like you said, have to start over somewhere else. But like, what art is being lost by this inane fighting, and
it's terrible. But it's obviously
this crossover between South Korea and Russia too is really interesting, because like I was in my research, I think it was for Anna Karenina, it was the first Russian musical to be produced internationally, and it was in South Korea. So there's this funny, there's this crossover between the two countries.
Yeah, for me at least, yes, because of Yeji. I wouldn't have known otherwise. And but when she brought up this thing, and I said, well, K-pop I think is popular, so I'm willing to try. And so, but yeah, there is this at least connection. I mean, really, Russia was part of the world for a long time. They were okay. They were, even after 2014 with Crimea, there was still good relations or decent relations with the West, but it's, you know, at this point it's not good and not possible to overcome it. So we try to find, in my case, I only care about theater. I don't care about the politics. And a lot of the artists in Russia who have left, they're good friends now, and I want them to succeed wherever they are. And they have a natural fear of their productions being banned, them being imprisoned even. It's happened with some artists, and it's not cool. And so they really, and of course the government the theater in Russia is government supported, which is great because it's a huge thing for Russians. Theater is, it's not some half-baked money-making scheme idea. So you get really interesting product because it's not like anybody's compromising. They're doing whatever they want, and as long as the government supports the theaters, they can do that. And to a certain degree, it's not censored even now. There's still interesting productions, but the best artists have left out of fear that it will be, and that's probably the bigger problem. But there's a few still here, and they're great. I mean, some great directors still here, and we're trying to find ways to film and distribute them if we can. And we have a partner now in China who is interested enough in some of those. So again, though, it has to be careful. We have to not upset too many people. We're doing it for theater, not for politics. I'm not a political person.
What you said earlier about like hoping to be part of that olive branch, I think that's part of it. I think, it may not change the world overnight, but I think the more we expose each other to art from all around the world and be able to see the humanity of all of our different cultures, that it is going to make a difference.
Well, in some cases it will. And, all you can do is just put stuff out there. I mean, the only thing that I like about it is that it's stuff that I like. I mean, like, as a would-be writer, you kind of want to say, and almost everybody in the world wants to say, "Oh, I saw a good movie the other day, and you should watch it." And now, I can say, "Oh, I made this movie. This movie wouldn't exist without me," and that's cool. It's cool, but it's not. It's a process, and I'm learning every day. Like, still, it's not. As I said, going in with no experience was not a great thing, but now it's interesting. At least every day interesting.
I think what I'm observing about art scene films, and to a degree with Stage Russia, is the number. You're not following the models of the other platforms. Like, I love that you can find your films, pardon me, on a wide variety of platforms, like Kanopy and Vimeo, and then your own platforms and cinema as well. Whereas with the other streaming platforms, it's like limited to like just one platform. Like Broadway HD is usually, well, you can get them on Amazon too, but it's kind of limited. Whereas your films, it feels like they're accessible, and the price also is very accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing with price. I hope it's good. I hope it's accessible. I have an assistant. We go, okay, how much should we charge for this one, do you think? And we look at what else is out there. But we want to make people. The Kanopy was a great find for us, and I think they came to us. I mean, the fact that you can watch it on public library platforms all over the world, in Australia and New Zealand and UK and Canada, US, that it's available for free is fantastic.
Yeah, you just need a public library card.
That's it, and it's great. And there is a business model, and the Kanopy does give us a little bit of money for it, so it makes it worthwhile. Digital theater, likewise, in England, the educational part is important for me because I very early on had involved theater professors, and Russian, Slavic professors in the process of trying to get them to come and see these performances, because I felt, well, if I can't get Western audiences, the general public, to come. Maybe professors will see the logic and the value of people who are going to be actors or directors or lighting people or sound people or whatever they will choose to do in theater, would be interested in seeing what's being done in Russia at the time, and even in Korea.
Yeah.
And so we involved them, and we involved them from early on, and now Kanopy has given us a place for them to then use the resources for their students, for classes, and Kanopy is a terrific place for us. I even tried Tubi for Phantom because I wanted to see how that model works. It's so far it's limited. I don't really, because I think our biggest fan base is not the US for K-pop musicals at the moment. It's probably Mexico or Latin America, and they don't have that. Tubi's not, at least the Spanish subtitle version isn't available there. But
and they have their own platforms too. The Latin American countries have platforms that aren't
we're on
it.
Theatrics, I think it is, or some of these platforms that we try to do that. We're releasing Werther. Werther just did very well in Latin America cinemas, and unfortunately, Cinépolis was only able to give it one screening. I think it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is fine on a Saturday, which is great. Because sometimes later, I think Phantom was screened at like 8 o'clock, and people were getting out at 11 o'clock. It was late, you know. But there were 2 opportunities to see Phantom, only one to see Werther. We got a lot of disappointed people. You didn't include our city. You didn't, only one screening. I work in the morning, and you can't please everybody. But somehow, when you get posts, you put a post out there and you get comments, the worst thing in the world is to have people say they can't go. I mean, it's one thing if you don't present them an opportunity to see it, it feels terrible. And so we're gonna put it into streaming on Sunday, the 26th, after our screenings in Peru and some of these South American countries and Central American countries on the 25th. Right away, it will go up for anybody who didn't get a chance to see it, and we'll make it affordable, rental or purchase. And then we're going to bundle Phantom with it, so that if they want to get both, I think it will be given, and we'll do it at a reasonable price. So hopefully, people who didn't get a chance to see it will be able to see it from there. And
I have so many follow-up questions. First of all, filming in Russia and in South Korea, I'm curious if you know. So in the US, often filming live theater is very prohibitive because of the union rules and contracts and the cost of it. And so stuff just doesn't get filmed because those negotiations are very complex. So how does it work in Russia or South Korea?
Much easier. I don't know about South Korea, honestly, but I would think in South Korea it's probably easier too. It's impossible to stream performances from American theaters, just impossible. So the only way to do it is, I think there was a theater company called the Wilma Theater in Philadelphia, and this is the only case.
They just got nominated for the Special Tony Award.
Wow, you know everything. That's amazing. You know that. I know it only because I know the guy who's the artistic director there. But
their streams are wonderful. Yeah.
And they put on a production by one of the artists who had left Russia, Dmitry Krimov, and that we work with. In fact, I work with he and his wife on. We're kind of figuring out how to do a bunch of his performances in Lithuania, Latvia. But in Philadelphia, I know that when I spoke to Eddie Aronoff, who's the artistic director there at the Wilma, and I asked him if we could put Cherry Orchard on our platform, maybe that he had done at Wilma, or in cinemas even. He said, I can't. The cost of giving you this film would be sky high, and it would be impossible. So in Russia, we pay anywhere between 10 and 15% to the theater, extra to the theater. We split it with the theater for authors' rights, and usually that includes acting. They just split it. They just do it that way. And the way we generally do it now is that, let's say 15% for their most recent one, Government Inspector, with the Satyricon Theater, each of us get 42.5%, and the authors and the actors get 15%. And the 15% comes out of the net profit first, and then we split anything after that. So, so that's, but it's not prohibitive. I mean, it's not going to kill anybody. There's no flat fees. There's no, it's just a percentage of sales. So whatever we make, if we do very well, they'll do well. And if we don't do very well, they'll get what their share is, and nobody feels bad. And that's generally the way it works. But I don't know what Yeji's in South Korea. I don't know what her situation is, but I can't imagine well, I don't know, actually, because she has a much bigger market than I do. She's working with a lot of different territories. Russian theater is a lot more limited, of course.
Yeah. This is Yeji from Wise Unseen?
Yeah.
And EMK is another company. Are they
well,
the
EMK
filming
is
company?
No, EMK, I think, is the producers that produce some of the musicals. They produce Phantom, and they produced Elisabeth, what we're doing soon. And
Excalibur as well, I think.
Yes.
Which is not one of yours, but it's,
Frankenstein. They do a lot, and their productions are very big and bold and
so lavish.
Lavish, perfect word, lavish. And Weisenstein is a very, very good. They're very good at capturing those productions with cranes, and much more than we have with our theater. But with musicals, you more or less want that. You want to feel like, swooping in, and you want these feelings.
But the captures of Count Orlov and Anna Karenina, they're like two of my favorite filmed live musicals ever. They're so stunning and like visually sumptuous, and the music is like epic, and the costumes are beautiful. Like everything about it is just stunning.
Yeah, we had very good success with Anna, and less so with Count Orlov, but still did well. Our Russian theater lovers in America didn't know what quite to do with some of those musicals, because it doesn't fit into it's not exactly the same audience. And I tried to bring in more, of the musical theater lovers to come and see it. And it worked to some degree, but it was, it's a challenge. The biggest challenge, it's funny, I was just talking to my assistant, and we were deciding how to do Art Scene Film's website now, because we were very schizophrenic. We have these artists in exile, which has nothing to do with Kyuhyun. So we're trying to figure, like, how should our homepage look? How should this look? And, we're thinking of just doing a kmusicals.com website and separating them and trying something.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. It's fascinating, like how to tap into audiences who love theater, but like finding these niches and then encouraging those audiences to expand their repertoire a little bit.
Yeah, it is. And we don't have a huge budget or anything like that, but I will say with the K musicals, there's a bigger opportunity for us to expand that. Having said that, Yeji is capturing most of that herself, and we're just picking up locations and places where she has gaps, and we can fill those. And good partners in Indonesia, good partner in Mexico, Latin America, and in the U.S., of course, and Canada and UK. Those are our places. And in Australia, we're trying to reach out to a distributor there. And then supporting them, but understanding the market. Very often I'll just present something like, here, we're doing this. Are you interested? Yeah, that looks great, and that's enough. And so we'll see.
I'm curious about Indonesia. Do you know what I have no idea what the musical theater scene is in Indonesia.
Honestly, I think they're more K-pop than they are musical theater.
Okay.
I mean, they love the musical theater, but they love Kyuhyun, I think, and Super Junior.
Got it.
Having said that, we're trying this Crash Landing on You, which is not at all related to that. So we'll see how it does. And our distributor there feels it's going to do well. I mean, that was based on a K-drama. You know, everything is K these days. And
Right.
so there's this possibility that it's a good read we'll get on it. I'll be able to see what kind of audience there is. I know that when we released Phantom, or I put something on Broadway World, like I did a press release on Broadway World, and it got picked up on Playbill and all over the place, made me realize this is a lot easier than Russian theater.
Mhm.
There were people who were coming out of the woodwork, for me at least, who were telling these lovers of Korean musicals or the lovers of K-pop, and telling me what they're getting interest from here and from here and from here. And one of those here's was Indonesia, and there was a lot of interest from Indonesia, and
Wow.
they felt left out, having not been included in some of the some of the distribution. And so I, again, just through trying and finding and asking and seeing, and eventually I got lucky and I got a good person there, and she's terrific. She takes anything we give her, and she doesn't, she does this amazing job of printing out tickets for the cinema, tickets like special commemorative tickets with, so
Oh,
it's not just
cool.
like not like a little thing you get a
It's like a
real,
theater ticket.
yeah, but with the images on it, and she goes all out. And I don't,
Wow.
we share those costs, but it's worth it to me because, for me, I just love the idea of making an evening for somebody or an
It's
afternoon
an
for somebody.
experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh,
not
I
good at,
love that.
yeah, they're really good at that. Even the fans do it in Latin America. If you look at our Facebook page, you'll see pictures or shares of people who created artwork that they brought to the theater to share with other the people they didn't know at the cinema. They just, they brought extra ones and just gave them away, or sunflowers or paper sunflowers or whatever. And it's remarkable, really, the in terms of, like, I would love to be able to do all that, and I don't even have to because they're willing to do it. And
The
so
community that builds around these, and it, like, I love the K-pop is inspiring that.
yeah,
But it's, there's this fear that filmed theater is going to kill theater and that people won't come to the actual theater anymore. But there is something to be said that, like, these cinema screenings are it's just like going, I mean, you're not seeing the show live in person, but you're still having that experience of community and shared experience.
yeah, I think it's funny too, because the streaming, when we streamed Phantom, it did well. It did okay. It's not phenomenal, but it did well. Uh, but most of our cinema goers want the experience of watching it with their friends, of dressing up, of putting, sharing the experience, as you said. Um, the but it's not exclusive. I mean, some people, like, so for example, we can't get to those cities. It's good. We have the streaming. But the amazing thing really is about theater and destroying live theater is that it's really a different animal. Uh, and I remember there's a small theater in New York City called the Mint Theater. And the Mint Theater is run by a guy named Jonathan Banks. He's a good guy, really solid, wonderful. His intentions are amazing, and his productions are very well done. And
And they also stream a lot of their work.
but interestingly enough, they hadn't been streaming before 5 years ago. And I was in New York, and even with Larson, with John, we would talk about these things with cast of Rent. And I remember after he passed away, we were at some sort of Thanksgiving. He always had a Thanksgiving feast, John. And Victoria Leacock created a Thanksgiving event, the first Thanksgiving after he had passed. And I was talking to the actors from Rent, and I was saying, why don't they film like they do for Channel 13, not for cinema necessarily, but every month we should have a different play or musical or something to watch on television. It would be great. And I mentioned it to Banks too at that time, and this was 20 years ago. And he said to me, no, no, no. Once people see it, they'll never want to see it live. It's like the magic is gone. And now I watch all his stuff is streamed, and I think to myself, well, all right, I don't know him anymore that well, so I don't write to him about it. But if I ever see him again, I'll certainly say, well, I told you.
I mean, even
But
Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton and In the Heights, he famously said before Hamilton was released, you can't film theater. There's kind of a similar thing, like the magic goes away. And now, Disney bought Hamilton for $75 million.
well, that changes a
and
lot
it's
of money.
still one of the most
Everything.
sold out shows on Broadway, despite the fact that you can stream it for, on Disney Plus. So yeah.
It's an advertisement, really. I think of it as if you watch something that you like and you see it and it's coming to your town, you'll go. You can watch football any Sunday, anywhere, and still people go to the stadium for the experience. And I just don't think it's a problem. I think, it's obviously a self-fulfilling prophecy on my part to say so, because it's good for me to say that theater needs film theater sometimes as well. But I really don't think they get in the way of each other. I just don't. And as I said, I think it enhances.
Yeah, there's a strategy. Like it doesn't mean that a show is broadcast on its opening night, but it could be made available after it closes, or being able to see shows internationally. It's branding people. Like after they they broadcast Pacific Overtures, sometimes Pacific Overtures in Japan in the 70s. Tourism from Japan increased like to the US. There was a direct correlation, and that was it was intentional. It was part of the whole reason why they broadcast it there. But there's this cultural exchange that can happen. Like if I ever get to have the opportunity to come to Russia, I would love to go to the Moscow Operetta. Like it looks stunning. I would love to go to Japan, to Korea, and see these theaters live.
Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah, exactly. I think it makes you. It satiates it doesn't it doesn't replace the desire to do it. It creates the desire to do it, and it's wonderful to be. And there's so many productions that won't tour and can't come over and can't do that. So, when you're showing it, and even if you show it in the same city, somehow it still works. Like if you have a film in New York and the production is in New York, well, for example, Hamilton. But of course, there's a lot of tourism involved with Hamilton. But you can imagine if it had never been filmed, I think it probably wouldn't have died, but it certainly wouldn't have had this continued life that it has, because you can watch. My stepson, he loves Hamilton, loves Hamilton, and knows all the songs, knows everything. He got into it a couple months ago, and he's watched it on Disney, and he's watched it on this. And if we ever went to New York, I think he'd die of happiness going to see it. So, it's one of the. It's without question one of the. I think that it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't prevent people. It encourages them.
Yeah. What do you think is the future of filmed theater?
Well, I think event cinema is always, if you're talking about for streaming, different than for cinema. Cinemas are in trouble. It's hard right now for them, especially since COVID. And in the case of musicals, I think that there's still an opportunity for people who want to go. They will want to see it sometimes. Like I can imagine if Hamilton had been released in cinemas, it probably would have done very well, I would think, at that time. But they wanted to make it quickly accessible. As far as film theater for streaming, obviously it's strong. For cinemas, it's a little trickier. I can't imagine a time in which people will not want to watch it or see it. The market gets maybe a little glutted with a lot of content, but I think people who want to see something will find it. And, if you can reach them and let them know that it's there, then it's likely to be, watched. And in my case, in the case of the National Theater, forgetting about the Metropolitan Opera, which is obviously theater too, but the National Theater, I think, is as strong as ever in cinemas right now.
Yeah, they just
So
released their 100th recording, their 100th film.
yeah, and they're doing, they're getting big stars, to perform in them, and they're choosing, Ray Fiennes and as Macbeth, and it's just, I think that their business is, I don't know their business, but I would imagine it's strong, and I think as long as cinemas exist and continue to exist, I think that they'll be an important part for especially art house cinemas, because this type of event cinema is a lot easier for art house cinema to schedule. When you have to schedule a big blockbuster, you don't get 50%. The cinema gets less than that. They negotiate whatever they can get, and they have a certain number of screenings they have to do in a given week, which is obligatory, and they could find themselves with something that's not great that they can't work around if something bombs. But with event cinema, you can, in little places, the Laemmle in Los Angeles, or the Symphony Space in New York, or the Wilmette Theater in Wilmette, Illinois, or the Northwest Film Forum in Seattle, they thrive on this stuff. It's important for them.
Yeah.
And even smaller than that in smaller cities. So it's, I think it's, as long as cinemas survive, there will be space for event cinema, theater on film. And then as far as streaming, even though it's maybe a little glutted, it's I think people want to see it, and as long as you find good content for them, they'll come.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so fascinating. I have my final segment is called My Favorite Things, where I ask you my favorite questions.
These are a few of my favorite things.
First up, what is your favorite musical?
Well, I never saw it on stage, but My Fair Lady is my favorite musical. But I only saw the film with Audrey Hepburn and Rex Harrison. But the favorite musical, well, I couldn't amend that and say my favorite musical that I saw was Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, wow. Which version? Which did you see?
I don't remember. Well, Ben Vereen was Judas.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Wow.
I remember Ben Vereen was Judas. I don't remember who played Jesus in it. And I always get confused because Godspell came out around the same time, and we saw that too. But yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar was my favorite musical.
Love that. I think that it speaks to the like the epic nature of shows that are on art scene films.
Maybe
it's maybe like so. There's that rock opera-esque style. I love it. Do you have a favorite filmed live musical?
Oh, well, if I leave out Hours and leave out Phantom, which I thought was terrific. You can choose your own. No, I guess no. Trying to remember some of the film. Well, I mean, I guess it would have. I guess Hamilton is probably the one that's best known. I didn't love the Rent movie version of Rent. I don't think there was ever a film of the production. That's the pity.
They filmed the final night on Broadway. The final cast was filmed live.
Oh, was it? So not rap and not
no, it's
not the original.
Yeah, and actually, Renee Elise Goldsberry, who is in Hamilton, is Mimi in that production.
Oh, is that right? That's great. Okay,
yeah, she's amazing.
But it's in some ways the limitations on what can be filmed because of the unions does prevent from having some great archival footage that would, you can't, it's irreplaceable to have some of the original casts. I didn't see the producers live, but I would imagine it was great because I love the movie. But
that's where I love the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. They have the Theater on Film and Tape archive, and they don't film everything, but they film a lot given their budget. And anyone with a public library card, a New York Public Library card, can go to the library, make an appointment, and watch archival recordings.
That's great. That's a great thing, and you should tell people who will watch this interview about public library with Kanopy and with this. It's tremendous.
Yeah, it's really an extraordinary research. A filmed live musical is not exactly a stage show, and it's not exactly a film. So what should we call it?
I always just call them film performances. I don't really, it's just film, you're filming a performance. And if you're doing it right, you're putting people in a place they haven't been before when they're watching it live. They're close up, they can get certain, and we often, for at least the Russian theater, because I don't control the filming of Yezhi's theater, the musicals, we involve the director of the production in the filming process and in the editing process. So we send things to him or her and we get their opinions, and we want to make sure that they are shaping the film, and they love the idea of having it be different than the performance that they created on stage. It's almost like a new project, an additional project for them, and they like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think if you have the advantage of seeing things you wouldn't see on a live show, especially if you're not seated in an ideal spot at a live show. And you know, I think Hamilton did a great job. We had a lot of money to do it, but they did a great job of capturing that performance and making it feel, you know, alive and not, you know, it's definitely not the same as live theater. Sitting in an audience, watching a production of anything at that moment, you know, with the actors on the stage, doing whatever they're doing, singing, dancing, acting, whatever, there is an immediacy to it you can't capture. But if you can do things you couldn't do otherwise, and that on the medium of film, and that makes it interesting enough for me at least to feel that it's justified, that it's not a bastardized version of theater.
It's like this third thing that is a combination of the live and the filmic.
Yeah, exactly.
Cinematic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where do you stand on bootlegs?
Yeah, not great. Not great.
Really?
Yeah, it's a pity. When we put Phantom on Vimeo, there were people who shared their password on Vimeo because they weren't going to use it for any. Vimeo wasn't important to them. It wasn't like Netflix, so they would share their, and that felt like, it's like, not that I want to take their money and that's all I care about, but you kind of feel like, you know, you work hard, and you know, you want to feel like, I don't want to be discouraged from doing something that makes it accessible. And so bootlegs, pirated copies of anything we do feel like, I mean, especially because we're making it free for everybody, you know, on even Phantom is on Kanopy as well. So we make, you know, we offer it for free. So there's really no reason that anybody should feel the necessity to steal it. And I don't have that problem with Russian theater. Nobody cares that much, you know. In the I mean, there's nobody out there saying, I want to boot like this and get this going. I just, you know, you don't want to be discouraged from sharing. And even now, I think if you can download many films from streaming platforms, and if you have equipment to somehow create a bootleg version or a pirated version, you can do it. And it makes you go, well, maybe, you know, and the answer that you get very often is, well, that's streaming, you're putting it online, that's what happens. And so you feel like, well, I don't want to feel like I can't put it online because somebody's going to steal it. It's a part of life.
Do you have a sense that, like, are enough people willing to pay for it to make it worthwhile? Like, can I give humanity the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just disappointing when you see it, and there's a long story I won't get into, but there was in Russia, there was somebody who copied one of our films. We made it available during COVID for free, and we made it password protected, but nonetheless, people were able to find a way to download it. And now they're distributing it, and it's, the funny part about it is that if they asked, I probably would have said yes. And they would have said, Stage Russia has given us permission to offer this to all people, because we don't make that much money anymore on the 2017 film. But they just post it as if they're like heroes. Like, and it makes me feel like that's the part that I don't like, the unfairness, the injustice of it.
Yeah.
But having said that, there's no, I live in the real world. I mean, there's no way I can stop these things from happening. You can't stop what's coming, and it's vanity. So I just let it go, most of the time at this point. But if you ask me, I don't love it.
Yeah, that's very pragmatic of you. What stage musicals do you wish had been filmed?
Well, as I said, I would wish the premiere of Rent had been filmed. Oh God, I would imagine that you can see most of the, as you probably know what has been filmed because of your public library visits. I've never been there. I've never seen the archives, so I don't know what maybe was filmed. But I don't know. I think if whatever has been filmed, if they ever put it on, if they ever had like a channel for it, and a way to watch them, like the Kanopy, through Kanopy, I'd be all over that. That'd be great. That would be phenomenal. So, and
Every now and then
I don't know what I wish had been filmed, but I can tell you, I wish the Kanopy had access to that New York Public Library thing.
Yeah, every now and then there's a release the archives argument on Twitter, but it's what we were talking about earlier with the rights and the negotiations and the contracts. Like basically every contract for every show would have to be renegotiated with every person that was part of, like, so every crew, every actor, every, like, the creators.
Yeah, but of
so
course, if you were to release them, have Kanopy pay, create whoever's, everybody sign off on that, for example, and say, as long as the money the Kanopy is earning on this, because the public library pays every time somebody watches $2, I think. So they pay Kanopy this $2. As long as Kanopy was obligated to give money back into the theater world somehow, as a charitable donation, and so the money was recycled, I think it would work.
I think as we get further, the early recordings are now 50 years old, and we're starting to kind of get a statute of limitations. I think will start to happen. I think eventually it could be possible, like, how early films are now freely available.
I think it's 95 years.
But
like copyright.
A future question. Just a couple more questions. What would you like to see filmed in the future?
Well, in Korea, they're supposed to be filming Frankenstein with Kyuhyun, and that I think would be terrific. That would be great.
Is that Frank Wildhorn?
I don't know.
Which version of Frankenstein is it?
I have no idea.
Do you know?
Honestly, I don't know. I only know that I'm getting questioned. I don't know that information, unfortunately. But there's a production that EMK has done before, and now they're going to a 10th anniversary performance with Kyuhyun, and so I'm not sure who created that. As far as other musicals or other things that I'd like to see filmed, or that have not been filmed, I don't know. I have no idea what the New York scene is like these days in terms of theater and musical theater. My instinct is that I want, of today's musicals, I would like to see things that I could distribute, and and I get requests all the time from the fans of the K musicals, and I press Yeji, and we keep trying to get those done, and that's my focus. I haven't really thought about the American musicals right now, and I guess because I do know that Broadway, HD, and some of these places do have some musicals, Kinky Boots and stuff like that, which I don't know how they were able to do that. I don't know how they were able to. It's almost like
they happen. They're just few. The Broadway and West End are few and far between compared to what is available, like worldwide and regionally. There's so much happening, but the kind of main stem, the biggest known things aren't getting filmed for public
What would you like?
distribution.
What would you want filmed right now?
Everything. Film everything.
You know what? That's what I think. Film everything. Have the archives. Have them there. Have it for somebody to look at, and then hopefully, 95 years from now, people can watch it on. But no, I really believe, like, I even think with Wikipedia and places like that, which have very strict anti-advertising policies. There's such an opportunity for me, I think, not for me, for the world to monetize Wikipedia by putting if you're reading about a musical and you want to watch it on DVD, for example, it's just a link is there, and then Amazon or somebody pays Wikipedia, and Wikipedia takes all this money and gives it away to some charity like.
And that's my hope with Filmed Live Musicals, is to be that place for musicals on screen, is that if people want to find musicals in Korean and Russian and Japanese and Tagalog and English, like that, and musicals from all over the world and historical too. My database has information on shows going all the way back to the
that's fantastic.
30s.
That's fantastic. That's great.
But monetizing it is very tricky.
Monetizing is tricky, but what I mean by monetizing is monetizing for charity. To me, if there's a way to monetize for charity and to give back, so if they were to allow if they allowed Kanopy, for example, access to all these archives, and the money somehow did not go to anybody and was placed back into anywhere.
Fund for the filming, to make the filming possible, and new technology, and
yeah, I mean, whatever it is, it would be like a fantasy world. But that would, to me, I think that's possible. I don't think an actor or an actress would mind their likeness being used if they know it's going to a good cause, and as long as nobody's making money on them, that it's just being used. I always feel there's an opportunity for that.
Yeah.
So everything,
and then there's the flip side. We still got to pay our bills.
Yes. Well, yes. No, that's true. But I really do believe that if you do something worthwhile and don't make money on it, you will make money elsewhere. I just think somehow there's karma out there that does that, and it's worked with me. I just filmed something I know we're going to lose money on, and there's no possible way we can make money on this film, because it was actually Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, a Lithuanian production by a Russian director, and the rights for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead are with MGM in America, and they're very litigious, and it's not easy to get them to agree to it. But we filmed it anyway because I like the director and I like the play, and we'll have some revenue from China and from some other countries where we have the rights.
So you won't be able to release it in the US?
Maybe not. We'll try. We're going to try. But the problem is what it was a unique opportunity to film without an audience, and we were able to go on stage and film it in a completely different way, like a real movie. And it was interesting enough for me to say, all right, no way I'm making money on this, but I'll have it. There's a very famous line by George Harrison, Beatles, who, when he was asked why he invested in the life of Brian, nobody wanted to invest in the life of Brian. Of course, it's now a great musical, but nobody wanted to invest in the film because it was sacrilegious or whatever the reasons. And Eric Idle went up to George Harrison and told him the story. He said, I'll give you the money. And he said, really? He said, why are you so willing? He said, I want to see it. I want to see this movie. I like the movie. I want to see it on the screen. And he was willing to pay, $10 million to watch a movie. And, this is, and when I just filmed this production in Lithuania, it was like, why spend money on something you can't really make a profit on? It's because I want to see it. I want to see this movie, and I want people to see it.
I know that there are people that want to see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll somehow we'll get it available to them some way. So.
Yeah.
I think if we use
friends
Kanopy,
and I will have a watch party.
Yes. I think through Kanopy, because it's educational, you can do it with fair use. So we might try something like that with copyright and stuff. So we'll see if we can get it.
Oh, fingers crossed. Eddie, this has been so wonderful. We could talk for hours. I have so many more questions I could ask. But where can we find you online?
artscenefilms.com. And as I said, our website may be a little schizophrenic with Korean theater, and we even have a Chinese film theater, not musical, by by Stan Lau, who's a Taiwanese director, very famous Taiwanese director worldwide. And so artscenefilms.com, stagerussia.com, and the Art Scene Films will have all the Korean musicals on there, though, and maybe kmusical.com. I'll let you know.
Okay. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes, and make sure to be signed up for the calendar. For the newsletter, and we send out once a month updates, and the calendar is also updated once a week with upcoming streams. So we'll make sure to sign up for both of those. Eddie, thank you again so much for your time. This has been just truly delightful.
It was my pleasure, and it was great talking to you.
Thank you to all our new listeners following on Patreon. And extra special thanks to our paying members, Josh Brandon, Belinda Broider, Jeremy Brull, Elliot Charles, Vincent Doyon, Rachel Esteban, Mercedes Esteban Lyons, Hannah Graneman, Alison Matthews, David Negrin, Jesse Rabinowitz and Brenda Goodman, David and Catherine Rabinowitz, and Joe Tillotson. Your financial support helps to continue the preservation of the history of film stage musicals and the curation of one easy place to find them all. You can also now make a one-off or recurring tax-deductible donation to Filmed Live Musicals via The Field. Visit filmedlivemusicals.com to learn more. The Filmed Live Musicals podcast is created and edited by your host, Luisa Lyons. FilmedLiveMusicals.com features information on nearly 200 filmed stage musicals from around the world and dating back to 1938, a newsletter with upcoming streams, and this very podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure to sign up for the free newsletter. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.